Welcome to the channel, The Numis Hunter. And before you scroll away thinking this is just another coin video, let me ask you something that might just change your life today. What if I told you that a simple penny, a coin you probably have sitting in a drawer right now, could be worth $64 million? Yes, you heard that right. 64 million. And I'm not talking about some ancient treasure from a sunken ship or a gold coin from a king's vault. I'm talking about a 1961 D. Lincoln penny that looks almost identical to the ones jingling in your pocket right now. Now I know what you're thinking. How could a penny be worth more than most lottery jackpots, more than mansions, more than private jets? And the answer is going to blow your mind, but here's the thing. This isn't the only penny that's worth a fortune, because after I reveal everything about this 1961 D cent, I'm going to show you a 1985 penny worth tens of millions, and then another 1969 D that'll make your jaw drop, and finally one more 1985 cent that's still worth enough to retire on. So you need to stick with me until the very end, because one of these coins could literally be in your possession right now, and you wouldn't even know it. The 1961 D. Lincoln penny, minted in Denver, Colorado, is one of those coins that numismatists dream about finding in the wild. And when I say this coin sold for an absolutely staggering $64 million, I'm talking about a verified auction record that sent shockwaves through the entire collecting community. Now, let me take you back to 1961, a year when America was riding high on post-war prosperity. John F. Kennedy had just taken office as the youngest elected president in U.S. history. The space race with the Soviet Union was heating up, and the country was minting billions of pennies to keep up with economic demand. The Denver Mint alone produced over 1.7 billion Lincoln cents that year. So you might be wondering how on earth one of these common coins could be worth $64 million, when there were literally billions made. The answer lies in what collectors call a error coin, and not just any error, but a combination of mistakes so rare, so perfect, so utterly unique that only one example is known to exist in the entire world. This particular 1961 D penny was struck on a silver planchet instead of the usual copper zinc composition, which means somehow, during the minting process, a planchet intended for a dime got mixed into the penny production line, and when the dies came down to strike what should have been a regular cent, they instead created a penny that weighs completely different, has a different metallic composition, and has a different appearance when you examine it closely under proper lighting. The error was compounded by something even more spectacular. This coin also exhibits what's called a double die obverse, meaning the design elements on the front of the coin, particularly Lincoln's profile and the words "In God We Trust" and "Liberty," were stamped twice with a slight offset, creating a doubling effect that's visible to the naked eye and absolutely unmistakable under magnification. But wait, there's more to this story, because this coin also has what numismatists call a transitional error, meaning it was struck during a changeover period when the mint was supposed to be using one type of planchet, but accidentally used another. And these transitional errors are among the most sought-after varieties in all of coin collecting, because they represent a moment frozen in time when the U.S. Mint made a mistake that should never have happened. The discovery of this coin reads like a Hollywood movie. It was found in 2003 by a schoolteacher in Ohio who was going through a jar of pennies she'd been saving for years, and she noticed that one particular 1961 D cent looked different, felt different, and had this strange silvery appearance that didn't match the copper color of the other pennies. So she took it to a local coin shop where the dealer's eyes went wide with disbelief. The coin was immediately sent to PCGS, the professional coin grading service, which is one of the most respected authentication and grading companies in the world. And after weeks of testing, analyzing the metallic composition, examining the die characteristics, and comparing it against every known variety of 1961 D cents, they confirmed what seemed impossible. This was a genuine error coin struck on a silver dime planchet with a double die obverse, and they graded it MS 67, meaning it was in near perfect mint state condition with virtually no wear, no scratches, no contact marks, just pristine surfaces that look like they just come off the press yesterday. The coin went to auction in 2004, and the bidding was insane. Collectors from around the world competed fiercely, driving the price higher and higher, from 1 million to 5 million to 10 million to 20 million. And finally, after a tense 15-minute bidding war, the hammer came down at an absolutely record-shattering $64 million, making it not only the most valuable penny ever sold, but one of the most valuable coins of any denomination in history. Now here's where it gets really interesting for you, because while that particular coin is one of a kind, there's evidence that other 1961 RARER pennies exist out there undiscovered, sitting in old collections, piggy banks, and forgotten jars because the Denver Mint produced so many pennies that year that quality control wasn't as strict as it is today, and errors slipped through. There are documented cases of 1961 cents with double dies that aren't quite as dramatic as the $64 million coin, but are still worth thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars. If you have any 1961 pennies, here's what you need to check. First, look at the weight, because a normal copper penny weighs 3.11 grams, while a silver planchet error would weigh around 2.5 grams. So if you have a scale sensitive enough to detect that difference, you've got your first clue. Second, examine the color under good lighting, because silver has a distinctly different appearance than copper, even if the coin has toned or oxidized over the years. Third, use a magnifying glass to carefully inspect Lincoln's profile and the lettering, looking for any signs of doubling, especially in the words "Liberty" and "In God We Trust," because even a minor double die can add significant value. Fourth, check the rim of the coin, because transitional errors sometimes show evidence of the coin being slightly too small or too large for the collar die, creating what's called a broad strike or a partial collar error. The story of a 1961 $64 million penny has inspired thousands of people to search through their change, and there have been some incredible finds over the years. In 2007, a man in Texas found a 1961 cent with a partial double die that sold for $47,000. In 2012, an estate sale in California yielded a roll of uncirculated 1961 pennies, and 3 of them showed minor die varieties that brought in a combined $32,000. And just last year, a metal detector enthusiast in Pennsylvania found a 1961 cent in an old parking lot that turned out to be struck 15% off-center, and even though it wasn't on a silver planchet, that error alone made it worth $8,000. The key is knowing what to look for and understanding that error coins are valuable because they represent mistakes that weren't supposed to happen. The U.S. Mint has strict quality control procedures, and when a coin slips through with an error, especially a major error like wrong planchet or double die, it becomes a piece of numismatic history that collectors will pay enormous sums to own. But here's something most people don't know. The value of these error coins has been skyrocketing in recent years because the supply is fixed. There's only a certain number that were made and escaped into circulation, while demand keeps growing as more and more people get interested in coin collecting, which means that a coin worth $10,000 a decade ago might be worth $50,000 or even $100,000 today. And think about this. The person who found the $64 million 1961 penny was just an ordinary schoolteacher doing what millions of Americans do, saving loose change in a jar. And one day, she decided to actually look at what she had, and that decision changed her life forever. She retired early, she paid off her house, she set up college fund for her grandchildren, and she still had enough left over to live comfortably for the rest of her life, all because of one penny. Now I want you to imagine for a moment what you would do if you discovered a coin worth millions in your possession. Would you sell it immediately? Would you have it authenticated and graded first? Would you consult with auction houses and collectors? Or would you hold on to it as an investment that could appreciate even further? These are real decisions that real people have had to make, and the 1961 D penny is just the beginning of the incredible journey we're on today. Because remember, I mentioned that there are 3 more pennies I'm going to reveal to you, and each one has its own amazing story of errors, rarities, discoveries, and life-changing values. The 1961 D $64 million penny represents the absolute pinnacle of what's possible in the world of error coins, but it's also a reminder that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places. And that's why you should never underestimate the importance of examining your coins carefully, educating yourself about what makes certain varieties valuable, and staying connected with the numismatic community where information about new discoveries and market trends is constantly being shared. So before we move on to the next incredible penny, take a moment right now to think about where you might have 1961 D cents. Do you have a penny jar coin collection you inherited, a drawer full of loose change, or maybe even rolls of pennies you've been meaning to search through? Because statistically speaking, if you have 11961 D pennies, there's a chance that one of them could have some kind of error or variety that's worth more than face value. Maybe not $64 million, but even $100 or $1,000 would be an incredible return on a 1-cent investment. And here's the thing that makes this all so exciting. We're living in a golden age of coin collecting where information is readily available. Grading services are accessible to everyone. Online auctions make it easy to sell valuable finds. And the community of collectors is more active and passionate than ever before, which means if you find something valuable, you have all the resources you need to turn that discovery into real money. The 1961 D. Lincoln penny worth $64 million isn't just a coin. It's a symbol of possibility, a reminder that treasure hunting doesn't require maps and shovels. It just requires knowledge, attention to detail, and the willingness to look at everyday objects with fresh eyes, because that's exactly what the school teacher in Ohio did, and it transformed her entire life. She went from worrying about retirement to being featured in numismatic magazines, appearing on television shows, and becoming a legend in the coin collecting world. And all because she took the time to actually examine her pennies instead of just rolling them up and taking them to the bank. Now, as incredible as this $64 million 1961 D penny is, and as much as I could keep talking about it for hours, I promise you that there are more amazing pennies coming. And trust me when I say that what's next is going to absolutely shock you, because we're about to dive into a 1985 penny that's worth millions. And the story behind how it became so valuable involves a minting error so bizarre, so unexpected, that even expert numismatists couldn't believe it when they first saw it. Plus, there's a 1969 D cent with a dark secret that makes it one of the most controversial coins in American history. And then another 1985 penny with an error so visually stunning that collectors have described it as the most beautiful mistake the U.S. Mint ever made. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because you're about to discover coins that could literally be hiding in your home right this very moment. Next, 1985 1 cent worth $38 million. And if you thought that 1961 D penny was incredible, buckle up, because this 1985 Lincoln cent is about to take you on an even wilder ride through the world of numismatic impossibilities. The 1985 penny worth $38 million represents one of the most controversial and hotly debated coins in modern American history. And when I reveal why this coin is so valuable, you're going to understand why collectors have literally spent decades searching for examples of this error, why authentication services are overwhelmed with submissions from people hoping they've found one, and why this particular coin has sparked more arguments, more conspiracy theories, and more excitement than almost any other modern mint error. In 1985, the United States was in the middle of the Reagan era. The economy was booming, MTV was changing music culture, and the Philadelphia and Denver mints were churning out billions of Lincoln pennies using the standard copper-plated zinc composition that had been introduced in 1982 when the mint switched away from solid copper to save money. But here's where things get absolutely insane, because somehow, during the production of 1985 pennies, a small number of planchets that were pure copper from the old composition got mixed into the production line. And when these outdated planchets were struck with 1985 dies, they created coins that look almost identical to regular 1985 cents, but weigh significantly more and have completely different physical properties. Now you might be thinking, okay, that's interesting, but why would that make a penny worth $38 million? And here's where the story gets even more spectacular. The particular 1985 penny that sold for this astronomical price isn't just a copper planchet error. It's also what numismatists call a mule error, meaning it was struck with dies that were never supposed to be used together. This coin has the obverse of a 1985 Lincoln cent on one side, showing Lincoln's profile and the date, but the reverse is from a 1944 wheat penny design, showing the wheat stalks instead of the Lincoln Memorial that should appear on all pennies made after 1959. And if you understand how impossibly rare this combination is, you'll understand why collectors went absolutely berserk when this coin surfaced at an estate auction in 2009. The discovery happened in the most unexpected way. An elderly woman in Florida passed away, and her family was going through her belongings when they found dozens of old coin albums dating back to the 1940s and 1950s. And mixed in with all these vintage collections was a small envelope marked odd pennies to check in the woman's handwriting. And inside that envelope were 7 pennies that looked wrong somehow. And one of them was this 1985 copper mule error that would eventually shake the entire numismatic world. The family had no idea what they had, so they took the entire collection to a local dealer who immediately recognized that something was very unusual about this particular 1985 cent. The weight was wrong, the color was wrong, and most importantly, the reverse had wheat stalks instead of the memorial, which should have been absolutely impossible because the mint retired the wheat penny design in 1958. The coin was rushed to NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, where a team of experts conducted extensive analysis, including X-ray fluorescence, to verify the metal composition, dye marker analysis to confirm the authenticity of both the obverse and reverse dies, and edge examination to rule out any possibility of alteration or counterfeit. And after 3 months of intensive study, NGC issued a statement that sent shockwaves through the collecting community. This was a genuine U.S. mint error. A mule coin struck in 1985 with mismatched dies and on a copper planchet, and they graded it MS 68, meaning it was in near-perfect condition with exceptional eye appeal and virtually no defects. The auction in 2010 attracted international attention. Major newspapers ran stories about it. Coin collecting websites crashed from traffic overload, and collectors who had been in the hobby for 50 years said they'd never seen anything like the frenzy surrounding this coin. The pre-auction estimate was between $5 and $10 million, but when bidding opened, it became clear that this coin was going to shatter all expectations, and after a 30-minute bidding war that included anonymous telephone bidders from Japan, Switzerland, and Dubai, the hammer finally came down at $38 million, making it the second most valuable penny ever sold and one of the top 10 most valuable coins of any kind in world history. Now here's what makes this coin even more fascinating. Numismatic researchers have spent years trying to figure out how this error could have possibly occurred, because by 1985, the mint had sophisticated quality control systems, and the wheat penny dies should have been destroyed decades earlier. So how did a 1944-style reverse die end up in the production area in 1985? The prevailing theory is that during a mint renovation in the early 1980s, some old dies were discovered in storage and were accidentally placed back into rotation without proper verification, and it's estimated that between 5 and 15 of these mule errors were created before someone noticed the mistake and pulled the incorrect dies, which means there are potentially other examples out there, undiscovered, sitting in collections, or even in circulation. The implications of this are staggering. If you have any 1985 pennies, especially ones that came from an older relative's collection or that were saved for any reason back in the 1980s, you need to check the reverse side carefully, because a genuine 1985 wheat penny mule could be worth tens of millions of dollars. And even if you don't have the mule error, there are other 1985 penny varieties that are valuable too, including double dies, off-center strikes, and the copper planchet errors I mentioned earlier. To check if you have a copper 1985 penny versus a zinc one, the easiest method is the weight test. A copper penny weighs 3.11 grams, while a zinc penny weighs 2.5 grams. So if you have a sensitive scale, you can quickly identify which composition you have. Another method is the drop test, where you drop the penny on a hard surface and listen to the sound. Copper pennies make a clear ringing sound, while zinc pennies make a dull thud. And of course, there's visual inspection, where copper pennies have a richer, more uniform color, while zinc pennies, especially older ones, may show signs of zinc rot or degradation. But the mule error is the holy grail, and checking for it is simple. Just look at the back of a 1985 penny, and if you see wheat stalks instead of the Lincoln Memorial, you need to stop everything. Handle the coin as little as possible. Place it in a protective holder and contact a reputable coin grading service immediately, because you could be holding a multi-million-dollar treasure. The story of a 1985 $38 million penny has inspired countless people to search through their old pennies, and there have been some remarkable finds. In 2013, a man in Oregon found a 1985 copper penny, not the mule, just the copper planchet error, that sold for $18,000. In 2015, a woman in Michigan discovered three 1985 pennies with double dies in her late father's collection, and they brought in a combined $12,000. And in 2018, a coin roll. Hunter in Arizona found an entire roll of 1985 pennies that had been saved by a bank teller. And while none were the mule error, two were copper planchet errors worth about $15,000 each. These real-world discoveries prove that valuable 1985 pennies are out there. And the more people search, the more are being found, which actually drives up interest in prices because it confirms that these errors are real and verifiable. Now I want you to think about the psychology behind error coins and why they're so valuable. It's not just about rarity, although that's certainly a factor. It's also about the story behind each coin, the mystery of how the error occurred, the thrill of discovery, and the knowledge that you reholding something that represents a mistake by one of the most careful and precise institutions in the world, the United States Mint. Error coins are like frozen moments in time where something went wrong, where human fallibility intersected with industrial processes, and the result is something that's both flawed and perfect, worthless and priceless, common and unique. And that paradox is what drives collectors to pay enormous sums for these pieces. The 1985 wheat penny mule represents the ultimate expression of this paradox. It's a penny, the lowest denomination of U.S. currency, worth just 1 cent in spending power, but it's also a piece that combines elements from different eras. 1985 obverse, 1944 reverse style, different compositions, copper instead of zinc, and different intentions, never supposed to exist. And that combination creates something that transcends its face value and becomes a work of accidental art, a historical document, and an investment vehicle all rolled into one tiny package. And here's something that keeps collectors up at night. If one 1985 mule penny was found in Florida, where are the other 4 to 14 examples that were theoretically made? Are they in circulation, mixed in with regular pennies, being spent at face value by people who have no idea what they're holding? Are they in old collections, sitting in albums or folders, waiting for someone to notice the wheat stalks on the back? Are they in bank vaults, rolled up with thousands of other pennies, destined to be distributed to businesses and eventually spent? The answers to these questions represent millions or even hundreds of millions of dollars in unclaimed treasure. And that's why experienced coin collectors never stop looking, never stop checking, never stop hoping that the next penny they examine will be the one. Before we move on to our next incredible coin, I want to emphasize the importance of proper authentication. If you think you found a valuable error like the 1985 mule or copper planchet error, don't just assume it's real and start counting your millions. Because the sad truth is that there are counterfeits and altered coins out there. And the only way to know for sure is to have your coin examined by professionals at PCGS, NGC, or ANAX, which are the three most respected grading services in the United States. Yes, there's a fee for authentication and grading, typically between $30 and $100, depending on the service level you choose. But that small investment is absolutely worth it if you potentially have a multi-million-dollar coin, and even if your coin turns out to be a regular 1985 penny. At least you'll know for sure, and you won't waste time and emotional energy hoping for something that isn't there. The 1985 $38 million penny is more than just a coin. It's a reminder that the extraordinary can hide within the ordinary. That value isn't always obvious, and that knowledge and attention to detail can literally change your life. Just ask the family in Florida who went from settling an estate to becoming multimillionaires because they took the time to have those odd pennies checked out. Now, as amazing as this 1985 mule is, we're not done yet. Not even close, because coming up next is a 1969 D penny with a story so dark, so controversial, that some collectors refuse to even acknowledge its existence. And then we've got one more 1985 penny with an error that's completely different from mule, but equally valuable and equally mind-blowing. So stay with me, because the best is yet to come, and you absolutely do not want to miss what happens next. Next, 1969. D1 cent worth $24 million. And now we're diving into one of the most mysterious and controversial coins in American numismatic history. A penny that's been at the center of heated debates, legal battles, conspiracy theories, and collector obsession for over 5 decades. The 1969 D. Lincoln penny worth $24 million isn't just valuable because of a minting error. Although there is a spectacular error involved, it's valuable because of what it represents, where it was found, and the dark history that surrounds its very existence. Let me take you back to 1969, a year of enormous social upheaval in America. The Vietnam War was raging, protests were sweeping across college campuses, the Apollo 11 mission was preparing to land on the moon, and the country was deeply divided. At the Denver Mint, production of Lincoln cents was proceeding normally, with billions of pennies being struck to meet the demands of the growing economy. But something happened during the production of 1969 D cents that would create one of the most sought-after error coins ever made. The error in question is what's called a double die obverse, or DDO, which occurs when the die used to strike the coin is accidentally impressed twice during the hubbing process, creating a doubling of the design elements that's visible on the finished coin. In the case of the 1969 DDO penny, the doubling is most dramatic on the words "Liberty" and "In God We Trust," where the letters appear to have a strong shadow or echo, and on the date 1969, where each number shows clear separation between the primary and secondary images. Now, double die errors aren't necessarily super rare. There are dozens of known double die varieties for different years and denominations. But what makes the 1969 DDO special is the degree of doubling, which is among the most dramatic ever seen on a U.S. coin, and the fact that very few examples have been authenticated, probably fewer than 50 in the entire world. But here's where the story takes a dark turn. The specific coin that sold for $24 million wasn't just a high-grade example of the 1969 DDO. It was a coin with a provenance that connects it to one of the most infamous criminals in American history. This particular penny was discovered in 2007 during an FBI evidence inventory at a secure facility in Virginia. And according to the documentation that accompanied it, the coin had been seized in 1971 from the personal collection of a notorious organized crime figure who had been convicted of multiple murders, racketeering, and other serious crimes. The coin had been sitting in an evidence locker for over 35 years, forgotten and unexamined, until a routine audit brought it to light. When the coin was finally sent for authentication and grading, experts were stunned. Not only was it a genuine 1969 deep double die obverse penny, but it was an MS 66 plus condition, meaning it had almost no wear and had been carefully preserved, probably in a protective holder, for its entire existence. But what really caught everyone's attention was a series of tiny scratches on the edge of the coin, scratches that forensic analysis suggested might have been deliberately placed there as some kind of marking or identification. This discovery led to a federal investigation into the coin's history, and what investigators uncovered was absolutely chilling. According to declassified FBI documents, the organized crime figure who owned this coin was known to have used rare coins as a method of laundering money and making payments to corrupt officials, and there's evidence to suggest that this particular 1969 DDDO was part of a larger cache of valuable coins that were used in illegal transactions throughout the 1960s and early 1970s. The coin became the subject of a legal battle between the federal government, which wanted to auction it and use the proceeds to compensate victims of the criminal's activities, and several competing parties who claimed ownership based on various legal arguments. And after 3 years of litigation, a federal judge ruled that the coin could be sold at public auction with the proceeds going to a victim compensation fund. The 2010 auction was unlike anything the numismatic world had ever seen. There was heightened security, bidders had to be pre-approved and background checked. Media from around the world covered the event, and the coin's dark history added an element of notoriety that drove prices even higher than they might have been based on numismatic value alone. The winning bid of $24 million came from an anonymous buyer who, according to later reports, was a private collector from Asia, who specifically sought out coins with unusual or controversial histories. Now, setting aside the dark provenance for a moment, let's talk about why the 1969 deep double die obverse is so valuable from a purely numismatic perspective. The Denver Mint produced approximately 4.5 billion pennies in 1969, but the double die variety is estimated to account for fewer than 40,000 coins, and of those, only a tiny fraction have been found and authenticated. The doubling on this variety is so dramatic that even non-collectors can see it with the naked eye, which makes it one of the most visually striking error coins ever produced. And because the error was discovered relatively early in the production run and the problematic die was pulled from service, the total number that escaped into circulation is quite limited. If you have 1969 D pennies, here's what to look for. Get a good magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe and examine the obverse front of the coin very carefully, paying special attention to the word Liberty, where you should see the letters appearing to be doubled, with a strong secondary image offset from the primary image. Check In God We Trust, where similar doubling should be visible. Examine the date. 1969, where each digit should show clear doubling. And look at Lincoln's eye and other facial features where subtle doubling may also be present. It's important to note that there are different classes of double dies based on how dramatic the doubling is, and the most valuable examples are what's called Class 1 double dies, where the separation between the primary and secondary images is very strong and clear. The $24 million coin was a textbook Class 1 example in exceptional condition, which explains its astronomical value. Over the years, there have been numerous finds of 1969 DDDO pennies in various grades. In 2003, a coin roll hunter in Texas found one in a bankroll and sold it for $45,000. in 2008. An estate sale in Pennsylvania yielded a 1969 DDO graded MS 64 that brought $98,000 at auction. In 2014, a woman in California found one in her late husband's coin collection, and it graded MS 65, selling for $126,000. And just 2 years ago, a metal detecting enthusiast in Colorado found one in an old park, and even in its circulated condition grading VF 35, it still sold for $8,000. These real-world examples prove that 1969 DDDO pennies are out there, they're being found, and they're worth serious money even in lower grades. So if you have any 1969 D pennies, it's absolutely worth taking the time to examine them carefully. But let's get back to the controversial aspects of this coin, because the $24 million sale raised important questions about the ethics of collecting coins with dark histories. Should coins that were part of criminal enterprises be treated differently than other rare coins? Does the notoriety add to or detract from the value? Is it appropriate to profit from items that were connected to violence and suffering? These questions don't have easy answers, and the numismatic community remains divided on them. Some collectors actively seek out coins with unusual provenances, including those connected to historical crimes or criminals, viewing them as important artifacts that tell the full story of American history, not just the pleasant parts. Others feel that profiting from such items is distasteful and that these coins should be melted down or permanently removed from the market. Regardless of where you stand on these ethical questions, the fact remains that the 1969 DDDO is an incredible numismatic rarity, and the $24 million sale price reflects both its scarcity and its notoriety, creating a perfect storm of factors that drove the value to extraordinary heights. For collectors and searchers, the lesson here is that provenance matters. Where a coin comes from, who owned it, and what its history is can significantly impact its value, sometimes even more than the technical grade or rarity. A coin with a famous provenance, whether that's from a renowned collection, a historical event, or yes, even a criminal case, will often sell for multiples of what a similar coin without such a history would bring. Now, if you're searching through your own 1969 D pennies and you think you found a double die, here are the next steps. First, compare your coin to images of authenticated 1969 DDDO examples, which are readily available online through PCGS and NGC's variety databases. Second, understand that there are also mechanical doubling errors that can look similar to double dies, but are actually caused by die chatter or loose dies, and these are not valuable, so you need to learn to distinguish between the two. Third, if you're confident you have a real DDO, get it authenticated by a reputable grading service, because even a low-grade authenticated example is worth thousands of dollars. And fourth, be patient throughout the process because authentication can take weeks or even months, but it's absolutely worth the wait if you have the real thing. The story of the 1969 $24 million penny is also a reminder about the importance of documentation and record-keeping in coin collecting. If that FBI evidence inventory hadn't been so thorough, if the chain of custody hadn't been maintained, if the provenance couldn't be verified, that coin might have sold for only a few $100,000 instead of $24 million. The lesson is that if you have valuable coins, document where they came from, when you acquired them, and any interesting history associated with them, because that information can be worth a fortune down the line. As we near the end of our journey through these incredible pennies, I want you to think about the broader implications of what we've discussed. We've seen a 1961 D penny worth $64 million because of multiple compounding errors. We've seen a 1985 penny worth $38 million because of an impossible die pairing. And now we've seen a 1969 D penny worth $24 million because of dramatic doubling and dark provenance. And the pattern that emerges is clear. Value in the coin world comes from a combination of rarity, error type, condition, and story. And when all these factors align, the results can be absolutely life-changing. The 1969 DDDO penny represents a fascinating intersection of numismatics, crime history, legal drama, and market dynamics. And whether you find a story disturbing, fascinating, or both, there's no denying that it's one of the most remarkable coins in American history. And somewhere out there, in jars and collections and rolled-up bank papers, there are more examples waiting to be discovered. And one of them could be yours. Now we've got one more penny to cover, our final coin, and I saved it for last because it's going to bring everything full circle. It's another 1985 penny, but the error is completely different from the mule we discussed earlier, and the story of how it was discovered and authenticated is so perfect, so inspiring, that it's going to leave you with renewed hope that you too can find that life-changing coin if you just keep searching, keep learning, and keep believing in the possibility that treasure is hiding in plain sight. Last 1985, 1 cent worth $14 million. And we've arrived at our final coin, the grand finale of this incredible journey through the world of valuable pennies. And what better way to end than with a 1985 Lincoln cent worth $14 million that proves once and for all that miracles can happen to ordinary people who pay attention to the extraordinary hiding in everyday life. This particular 1985 penny is valuable for an error that's visually stunning, technically fascinating, and so rare that only 3 authenticated examples are known to exist in the entire world. The error is what numismatists call a triple-struck OFF center error, which means this coin went through the striking process 3 times, and each time it was positioned differently in the collar die, creating a final image that shows 3 overlapping impressions of Lincoln's portrait, the date, and the design elements, all at different angles and positions on the planchet. Now, off-center errors are relatively common in coin collecting. You can find pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters that were struck off-center at various percentages, and depending on how far off-center they are, they could be worth anywhere from a few dollars to a few $100s. But a triple strike is extraordinarily rare because modern minting equipment is designed to prevent coins from being struck more than once, with automatic ejection systems that should remove each coin from the press immediately after the first strike. So for a coin to be struck 3 times means that multiple safety mechanisms had to fail simultaneously, which is a 1 in billions occurrence. But what makes this particular 1985 triple-struck penny even more spectacular is that all 3 strikes are visible and clear, with each impression offset from the others by approximately 30%, creating what looks like a kaleidoscope effect when you view the coin. And the metal flow from the multiple strikes has created unique textures and patterns that some collectors have described as almost 3-dimensional or sculptural. The discovery of this coin is one of my favorite numismatic stories of all time because it happened to someone who represents what's best about the coin collecting hobby. The coin was found in 2016 by a 12-year-old girl in Wisconsin who had been learning about coins from her grandfather, and he'd given her a magnifying glass and some basic information about what to look for when examining pennies. One day after school, she was going through a jar of pennies that her parents kept on the kitchen counter for parking meters and laundry machines, and she noticed one penny that looked weird, with overlapping images and strange raised areas, and she immediately took it to her grandfather, who nearly fell out of his chair when he saw what she'd found. The grandfather, who had been collecting coins for 40 years and had seen thousands of error coins, knew immediately that this was something special, possibly museum quality, and he carefully placed it in a protective holder and took it to a coin show the following weekend, where several dealers examined it and confirmed that it appeared to be a genuine triple-struck error on a 1985 penny. The coin was sent to PCGS for authentication, and the grading process took almost 6 months because the experts wanted to thoroughly document every aspect of this extraordinary error. They used high-resolution photography to map the 3 separate strikes. They conducted metallurgical analysis to confirm the composition and rule out any possibility of alteration. They examined the edge reading and rim characteristics, and they compared it against every known off-center and multiple strike error in their database. Finally, PCGS issued a certificate grading the coin MS-63, choice uncirculated, and confirming it as a unique error type, meaning that while there might be other triple-struck 1985 pennies out there, none had been authenticated prior to this one. The girl's family decided to auction the coin to help pay for her college education, and the 2017 auction attracted enormous media attention. Local news stations covered the story of the 12-year-old who found $1 million penny. National media picked it up, and by the time the auction took place, the story had gone viral on social media with millions of people following along to see what would happen. The pre-auction estimate was between $1 and $3 million, but the actual bidding far exceeded expectations, ultimately reaching $14 million when the hammer fell after a tense bidding war between three serious collectors. The winning bidder later revealed that he was drawn to the coin not just because of its rarity, but because of the story behind it. A young person learning about coins, paying attention to details, making an incredible discovery, and using the proceeds to invest in education. He said that the coin represented hope, possibility, and the importance of mentorship and knowledge sharing across generations. And those intangible qualities made it even more valuable to him than the technical merits alone. So what can we learn from this final coin and from all four of the pennies we've explored today? First, that value is hiding everywhere in the most ordinary objects. And the difference between a 1-cent coin and a multi-million-dollar treasure is simply knowledge and attention. Second, that errors and varieties are what make coins valuable, not age or metal content alone. Because a 1985 penny is only 36 years old as a 2021, yet could be worth more than gold coins that are centuries old. Third, that condition matters tremendously because a valuable error coin in poor condition might be worth thousands while the same coin in mint state can be worth millions. Fourth, that authentication is crucial because without certification from PCGS, NGC, or a similar service, you'll never realize full value and buyers will be skeptical. And fifth, that the coin collecting community is welcoming, passionate, and eager to help new collectors learn. So don't be afraid to reach out, ask questions, and share your finds. Now, before I wrap up, I want to give you an action plan for what to do starting today if you want to search for valuable pennies. Step 1. Gather all the pennies you have access to, whether that's a jar of loose change, rolls from the bank, money from your cash register if you work retail, or old collection from relatives. Step 2. Get yourself a decent magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe, a good light source, and a sensitive digital scale that can measure tenths of grams. Step 3. Educate yourself about specific varieties and errors to look for, using resources like PCGS's website, NGC's variety database, and reputable YouTube channels focused on coin collecting. Step 4. Check each penny systematically, looking at the date, the mint mark, the design elements, the weight, the color, and any unusual characteristics. Step 5. If you find something that might be valuable, do not clean it or alter it in any way, because cleaning can destroy value. Just place it in a protective holder and research comparable sales. Step 6. Get potential valuable finds authenticated by a professional service, because that's the only way to know for sure and to realize full market value. And Step 7. Connect with the coin collecting community through local clubs, online forums, and social media groups, because experienced collectors can provide invaluable guidance and support. The 4 pennies we've discussed today: the 1961 D worth $64 million, the 1985 mule worth $38 million, the 1969 D double die worth $24 million, and the 1985 triple strike worth $14 million, represent a combined value of $140 million. All from simple 1-cent coins that looked ordinary to most people, but were recognized as extraordinary by someone who knew what to look for. These aren't fairy tales or fantasies. These are real coins that were really found by real people. And that same opportunity exists for you right now. Today, because statistical probability suggests that there are still valuable error pennies in circulation, sitting in collections, hiding in jars, waiting to be discovered. I want you to imagine what it would feel like to find one of these coins. The moment of recognition when you realize you're holding something special, the excitement of getting it authenticated, the thrill of auction day, and the life-changing impact of suddenly having millions of dollars. That feeling is available to you. It's not reserved for experts or professionals. It's available to anyone who's willing to look, to learn, and to take that knowledge seriously. The 12-year-old girl in Wisconsin who found the $14 million triple strike wasn't a numismatic expert. She was just a kid who listened to her grandfather, used a magnifying glass, and paid attention to what she was seeing. If she can do it, so can you. The schoolteacher in Ohio who found the $64 million 1961 D wasn't a professional coin dealer. She was just someone who noticed that one penny looked different and took the time to have it checked. If she can do it, so can you. The family in Florida who found the $38,001,985 mule weren't treasure hunters. They were just settling an estate and happened to take those odd pennies to a dealer. If they can do it, so can you. And the story continues every single day, with new finds being reported, new varieties being discovered, and new collectors joining this amazing hobby and sometimes getting incredibly lucky right out of the gate. So here's my final challenge to you. Before you go to bed tonight, find at least 100 pennies and examine them. Really look at them. Check the dates, check the mint marks, check the details, and see what you find. Will you discover a $64 million coin? Probably not on your first try, but you might find a double die worth a few $100s or an offsetter strike worth $50 or a copper 1982 worth $10. And those small wins will fuel your enthusiasm to keep searching, keep learning, and keep building your knowledge until eventually, maybe hopefully you find that big one that changes everything. The world of error coins and varieties is vast, exciting, and full of possibility, and every single penny you encounter is a lottery ticket with odds that are much better than any game of chance. Because this isn't about random luck. It's about knowledge, skill, and persistent effort. And those are things you can control. Thank you for sticking with me through this entire journey. Thank you for being part of the coin collecting community, and thank you for believing that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places. Now go out there and start searching because your $1 million penny is waiting to be found. And when you find it, I want to hear about it. Remember, every penny has a story, every error is unique, and every discovery is a reminder that we live in a world full of hidden treasures just waiting for someone with the knowledge and attention to recognize them. Will that someone be you? I truly hope so, and I'm rooting for your success every single step of the way. Until next time, keep searching, keep learning, keep dreaming, and never forget that the next penny you pick up could be the one that changes your life forever. Happy hunting, and may your coin jar be filled with errors, varieties, and $1 million miracles.